have talent, Jensen. You ever need a job, you tell me. I'll hook you up.
I take it the kid made it back in one piece.
He says I owe you a weapon. I always repay my debts. With interest.
I'll settle for you telling me what you know.
Bell Tower keeps 2 ships in port. They think nobody notices, but I keep an eye. Every couple of days, one of them loads up in the middle of the night and sails out.
Heading where?
A wise man doesn't ask. I just know the Heisensu pulls out tonight. And where she make port, I bet you find your scientists.
That's a whole lot of maybe, Tong.
True. But maybe you lucky more times than I can count.
Bell Tower runs tight security. How do you expect me to get on their ship?
One of my boys will leave a package inside a locker for you in an equipment shed. You find it, we talk, and I tell you what to do next.
I'll be waiting with bated breath, I'm sure.
So this dialogue that you have with Tong Si-hung here was quite challenging to write in many respects. It was actually one of my favorites, but it was very challenging because we had to react to so many things. We had to react to whether you'd killed the harvesters. We had to react to what had happened to Ari Van Bruggen. And so there were all these variables that we had to do, and the one that we almost missed until the last moment was the fact that you might have played all of Hengsha 1 and Tong would never have met you because you could have snuck through the vents and eavesdropped on him. And I didn't catch that because the dialogue was always starting with, oh, you again kind of thing, like, oh, you've ruined all this. And how do we kind of explain that he doesn't know who the heck you are until you walk in here? So we almost missed it, but we caught it, and I was very happy that we did. But Tong was a fun character, very interesting.
And also at this point, like Tong, I mean, we just wonder how many players really make the link that the scientist Chevenko in the walk and talk at the beginning of the game that he has this really weird augmented arm, and now it's not Adam Jensen, Tong Si-hung has it right now. So because now you've played for about almost 20 hours, yeah. Like to which extent, like
because we've never heard anything from the fans or forums or fan art or whatever in relation to that. So it's, or even the articles, reviews. I don't think
it's either nobody remembered it by that time. We thought it was bigger than it is, and people really don't care.
People were just like, oh, okay, cool. It's that
okay,
that guy with the mustache at the beginning, that's his arm.
But, the Movember guy.
Yeah, the Movember guy. The room as well is a good example of something that was important to us in the game. Sounds like all my stuff started with something that was important to us in the game. So this was also important to us in the game. Was every time there'd be something mundane, you know, like this is kind of like a boiler room or something like that, to always, not always, but as often as possible, to give it something special. And if you look at all the dozens or hundreds, whatever, of light bulbs on the ceiling, it's a bit bad. Say that again?
I love those.
You like them? Yeah?
So nice.
Well, see, there we go. Thanks. Yeah. That's kind of like, that was the goal. It's like, it's so commonplace in video games that, hey, this is a boiler room. You know, here's a picture of a boiler room, and then you know the level end up looking just like a regular mundane boiler room. Or I don't know. The example I give all the time is you know, it has to happen in the lobby of a bank, and it just looks like a boring bank. Yeah. And we always try to make sure that those places would have some spunk nonetheless. And this is what these light bulbs do.
The rule probably is that a boring room doesn't have to be boring, right?
Pretty much. Yeah.
I want this for my bedroom ceiling.
I don't want to make it for you. Looks like a lot of work.
It must be expensive in electricity, though.
So now we're into the sewers that lead up to the seaport map. Actually, when we look at the lower Hengsha map, and the fact that the seaport, obviously, it's on the shore, on the seashore. The way of the geography, the way we build the city, and we didn't have a real credible access to the seaport, and like the seaport technically is more farther down the road, and we were like, okay, how do we cope for that? Like, how do we fix that? And we thought, like, you know what, Jensen just going to walk into a sewer, and then is going to get out in the seaport, and therefore, since he will have no point of reference, he will buy the fact that it's totally illogic, but he won't see it. So I think in the end it worked well.
In the end, it works.
Yeah.
You buy or sell? I do it all. Come. You see what? Yeah.
So here we have what I think is one of the very, very top, most beautiful places in the game. Again, it's all about seeing the double-decker city. Another great matte painting done by Meduzart here in Montreal.
The Sick Vista.
We call it the Sick Vista.
Thanks to Steve.
It's just good. It's just so great to see something that's probably the most sci-fi thing in the entire game. Like, it could fit in any space opera thing almost, if you look at the kind of mechanical design that we gave it and all that, but yet is very kind of 20th century city that's at the bottom of it, and the very normal kind of docks and piers things and oil refinery things we have in the foreground. So great contrast here. Very impressive stuff.
And it's funny that one of the reasons it's so good is that you see it from a ladder climb, and that
yes, as you come out.
Yes, as you come out. So that forces the camera to look at it, and it's just it's breathtaking.
It gives a good sense of scale as well.
Yeah.
How huge that is.
And something that made me very happy on top of how successful it is that this is the first time that we've truly shown the game to the public. This was at E3 2010, if I'm not mistaken, and this is I mean, we started in Hangsha, but we culminated in that part, and I was always like, every time, like, we must have demoed it like, I don't know, 100 times during E3, but every time that you know, we were coming out of that sewers and that
We'd
vista
see
was
it.
opening. I was always like, yes.
But
yes.
demoing it at E3 always gave me, I always felt so guilty demoing it because I knew that at E3 your briefer was Malik. And yet I knew that because we kind of adjusted the story for the demo, but I knew that it wasn't going to be Malik because we didn't know if Malik was dead or alive here, and it had to be Tong instead. So that was always for me while I was demoing going, yeah, okay.
It's a small lie.
It's a small lie, just a small one. But
There was a bigger lie. In
Yeah,
all of
but
that.
we'll talk about it in another beacon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing, like speaking of lies, it's I remember like when we get to get out of the ladder, like Steven said, and now we absorb this big structure in Hengsha. Now we start to infiltrate the place, and for the first part of the demo, obviously we were still making the game, and the AI was still so buggy.
That's
at that
the lie I
point.
was talking about.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the other one.
No. So many lies, eh?
So many lies.
It's a conspiracy.
Like Eliza says, trust no one because
Trust no
everybody
one.
lies. And we, for the first part of the demo, we had to totally shut down the AI. They were just doing their patrols, but you could have jumped all over the place.
They didn't
you could
know
have
whether that Adam was there.
You could have shot the gun. You could have done whatever you wanted. They would have never reacted to you.
So we're at E3 playing it like, oh my god, he almost saw me.
And what's funny is that it was ensuring the experience,
Yeah.
but if we were screwing up our
Critical path.
choreography,
Yeah, choreography.
then it would
People
it
would
fall
have
apart.
realized, well, he should have seen you. Like
Yeah,
you're mentioning, like this thing is all hard and stealthy, and you were just right in front of him.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, it's another map, the seaport, where we wanted to really reinforce somehow through emails the concept of the kidnapped women.
yeah,
That it became the inspiration for
it became the inspiration
D-
for the DLC, the
Yeah.
missing link, which came after, because it was always something we wanted to have, is to explain that women were being kidnapped and that they were eventually going to be in the High Round project. But the actual story, as we had written it for the game, didn't really support that strong enough. We had nothing. We tried in the seaport to reinforce it a bit more with emails hanging around it here and stuff, but we never did. So when it came time to do a DLC, we said, that's the story we're going to tell. And it kind of was the impetus for making the missing link.
Access granted.
You sure could teach my boys some tricks, Jensen.
Tom, how did you get this frequency?
Ancient Chinese secret. Now listen, you're going to plant that package in Administrator Wang's office. Put it on the bastard's desk and trigger it. Sound good?
Sounds like I'm doing you a favor. How does it help me?
The explosion should distract the guards. Then you hop in a cargo pod and off you go. But you only got one shot. No turning back once you trigger that thing, you get me?
I got you. Only set it if I'm ready to go.
Access granted. Access granted. Access granted.
So here that's the first time we discovered that we could use we could use the bugs guard to drop from a chopper into a scene. And actually, as we were building the E3 demo, that feature didn't exist, and we really wanted it to be spectacular. We wanted to give a little bit of oomph to the experience and everything, and we really pushed, and I was really pushing for, I want that chopper with that has a bugs guard and drops it in the scene and everything, and we managed to pull it off for E3. And after that, we had to rearrange the map that if you played stealthy, the bugs guard didn't show up, and if you didn't play stealthy, now it would show up. And that's why also, once we did that, after when we build a construction site in Angsha, you also have the bugs guard that is dropped by a chopper, so we reused it another time in the game. But if it was not of E3 demo, we would have never had that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then in the hangar here, we were also supposed to be supporting the story of the kidnapped women in the life pods and kind of setting up for how Jensen was going to get into one of these pods and get to Omega Ranch. But again, I think it's probably an area where we sort of dropped the ball a little bit, and we never really made them very visible. They're here in the hangar, but nobody ever sees them or understands what they are.
Weird. Yeah, I don't even remember really what happened, because there's just like 3 or 4 of them all the way in the back, and to be honest, I have no memory of why there's just 3, or
I think what happened was we were under,
because I remember how much we wanted to put tons,
Yeah, we wanted to have a lot, and we wanted to have you kind of wondering what the heck these are, but I think what happened is we just had a lot on our plate, and we didn't have enough time to get it pulled off, so that's what happened.
Access granted. Access granted. Access granted. Access granted.
distraction wasn't just for me, was it, Tom? Richard, I'm going off the grid for a while. Not sure how long.
Why? What are you up to, Jensen?
Following a lead.
And where exactly is this lead taking you?
You there! Get that cargo, clear the fire! We're pulling out now! Load it! Secure the...
Answer me, Jensen. Where are you going?
Hell if I know, Pritchard. Hell if I know. Megan.
No Megan here, I'm afraid. Though I admit I'm curious who she might be. Who are you? And what are you doing on my ship?
Bell Tower keeps 2 ships in port. They're going to plant that package in Administrator Wang's office. Then you hop in a cargo pod and off you go. And where she may port, I bet you find your scientist.
You the cruise director? Because I've got a complaint.
You think you're funny, do you? Well, let's see how funny you feel after Lieutenant Keitner gets through with you. Lieutenant?
It's useless to resist. This chair has a built-in EMP field generator. Your augs are nothing but dead metal right now.
Is that so?
No doubt they will have reset to factory 0. Still. Like...
Lucky me.
Access granted.
Attention, he'll spill his guts or they'll spill them for him.
How much?
What are you doing?
So we're joined right now by some special guests. These 3 gentlemen were very instrumental in helping to create the missing link.
Hi,
I'm Hubert Corriveau. I was the environment director on the DLC, which was mainly coordinating environment, the production of environment.
My name is Frank McCann. I was the senior level designer working on the whole cargo, so the ship was mine at some point.
And Antoine Teasdale, I was a game designer on the Missing Link.
And one of the first challenges we faced when we did the Missing Link was having to basically create that chair and find a reason that we could take away Jensen's augmentations, right?
Yeah, removing the augmentations to weaken the character of Jensen, introduce as well the main bad guy Perk was such a challenge. At the beginning, we wanted to have Jensen's like almost held on the ceiling through chains, and then once he gets free from his constraints, we're actually falling on the ceiling, very weakened, all bloody
to really
and stuff.
stress that vulnerability.
Oh my god! But just technically trying to do that was very difficult. So we said, you know what? Just reusing Jensen sitting in a chair was much more easier, and then we went from a very conceptual type of design for the chair.
Basically the most overwrought assets in the DLC. We spent around 10 days just doing the chair to try and convey that it's an impressive chair that could disable Jensen.
And could shut down all his augmentations.
And augmentation, that's right. That was actually an early decision in the design to strip the player from all augmentations and equipment. We sort of wanted to make a bit of a statement that the game is not just action, it's also stealth, and get a player into a position where you can actually figure out how to actually get out of this chair, this constraints, this whole environment is very alien to him.
And we actually had a lot of problems with making sure the multipaths were obvious, weren't we?
Yep, because just starting from the chair and then moving on to the corridors and the next steps was pretty difficult. Yeah.
But we did it. So you may have just heard a voiceover over the PA, someone doing something. That was supposed to be a very subtle hint that Jensen has a secret helper on board, doesn't he?
We were supposed to have so many elements playing in favor of player, but without actually telling too much that someone was trying to help Jensen. We had monitors that were monitoring the ship status, because the ship was automated at some in the design, and the monitors would just change their visual to indicate to the player you can go now, and all this based on the timing of the patrolling guards in the immediate surrounding for the player. And we also had the camera shutting down just at the right moment, the lasers being shut down right at the proper moment. But all this trying to support as well the multi-path, multi-options of a typical Deus Ex game was like, actually it felt more like there were bugs or badly communicated stuff happening to the player didn't understand. So I strongly suggested to just rip them out. At least we kept the PA announcement with the over guys who were just being changed to a new patrol. But that worked well, but the rest, we just scrapped it.
So the secret stash was an interesting thing because we wanted to make sure that the players' choices early on in the game would determine what kind of equipment they got here.
Yeah, exactly. And through the initial conversation we had with Netanya. I mean, Netanya, Nadia, I always confuse it. Anyway, so yeah, during the conversation I suggested that we have some kind of a branching moment inside the conversation not necessarily just role playing for the player, which from time to time we wanted to support in some moment, not always just a debate conversation, but having those little moments that behind the scenes, the player without knowing, we're actually doing some checks, and depending on how you answer to Netanya, you actually have a different gear that we give you. So I basically have 4 scenarios that I triggered based on how you portray the conversation, how you did the conversation itself, and I just swapped the proper scenarios with the proper gear inside.
And we were always curious because we didn't want to make it super obvious that you're picking stealthy and not stealthy when we were writing the dialogues, but we had to. And then the whole setup of the stuff, because we had to get across the idea that it had been left behind by the secret helper.
More importantly, what we created is people kind of realize, yeah, but Jensen is all bloodied up, and once he gets his suit, he's all clean. And we basically did if you notice, after you take the stash, you'll notice a bunch of little medical pads, bloodied and stuff, as though Jensen had washed himself with, he cleaned himself with the medicament, the medical supplies that someone provided him there. And it was the first time basically that we had a swap of character during the gameplay. So that was one of the rare technical development that was done for the DLC.
Pritchard, is that you?
I'm unlocking the door.
You're breaking up.
Fine, the CIC.
Holding for dot confirmation. Adjusting main ballast tanks. Dropping draft to 2 meters. Cleared landing pad for liftoff. Rifleman bank station control confirmed. Holding for dot confirmation.
Come get me!
Adjusting main ballast tanks. Dropping draft to 2 meters. Adjusting main ballast tanks. Drop and draft 2 meters.
Yeah, from the playtest, those alternate paths inside the corridor itself came out very strongly, very good, and I'm pretty proud of those because I try to add alternatives to just walking down the corridor based on the timing of the patrol, or adding the infamous air vent, which I didn't want to do, even though we do have some air vents in the cargo, as it is obvious. But those work very well, so I'm pretty proud of trying to put the player in, trying to figure out using his observation and still using the ability of looking at the patrol, still in the same environment, like inside the corridor itself, but still slightly off and being safe, and but not fully safe. So you have to time yourself between those openings, and it worked really well. I'm pretty glad of those.
Container breach detected. Stasis pod failure imminent. Manual re-initiation of stasis pod vital.
Yeah, over here we have the first cargo room, the first big environment that I wanted the player actually to play around with the environment. You can actually see the exit of that room towards the bridge, towards your actual next objective, trying to contact the Pritchard and help, actually get help. But the thing is, because you came from a very tight corridor-ish, a very narrow type of environment, very heavy intentions, I want to change the pace a bit. So I focus more about the environmental puzzle. And the thing is, since we just did the whole production of Deus Ex HR, Human Revolution, we were pretty good with our tools and the editor itself, and we were able to actually do more complex type of interactive objects.
Like that one here. You're standing on a container that can move in different areas. To a player, it looks like a simple object. You just press a button and it moves. But it requires certain scripting, and this is one object that we could do only because we mastered our tools after the development of DX Human Revolution. So we were able of doing those more complicated objects. Well, to us, they are more complicated, and at little fees actually. So that's one of the added perks of doing a DLC, mastering your tools.
And the thing is, because the container is very in our face, we wanted to play around with it. It's very Deus Ex. You can actually explore the environment or find open containers. and find your own way towards the exit, not necessarily needing to use the container itself. So trying to use the augmentations, jumping, and whatnot. So that's pretty cool.
Okay, so you're out of the boat right now and you see this storm in front of your eyes, and this is where we display fully the full extent of the new shader development we did for the DLC. This was all content driven without programmers. It's what we could do with our tools. So there's it's not a new engine per se like people tend to say, it's just new shaders that we used. You have better lighting, you have better shading everywhere, the lighting, you have better contrast, you have the full frame glow, which kind of gives this extra edge of lighting everywhere. And actually full frame glow is probably the cheapest thing we added and the most rewarding technology we added as far as ramping up the graphics in there. So, and you see how we cheated the storm. Basically, you can feel here that the boat is moving. It's actually just the sky around you moving. You have this enormous mesh with water. All the vertex of the water are kind of moving back and forth. Particles are being emitted. But all of this mesh, all the water around you, all the ocean and the sky, this is swaying left and right. The boat is actually entirely stationary. It just gives the illusion that the boat is moving because everything else around it moves.
And the sound really helps to sell that as well. All that storm noise and etc.
Yeah, so this is all that's set up here. Even the rain. You have this rain in front of you, which for most of the development we didn't want to put in there. We weren't sure we were able to pull it off in time, but the FX guy made a jump for it toward the end, and it was really great once it was in. So this white hallway, at the beginning this always was the same set of corridors and the other one you saw at the beginning of the cargo. But because we're out of the storm and we just got back in, the art director wanted to have a stark change of visual pacing. So this white corridors is very calm, which is a stark contrast to the storm that you have outside. It was something we did at the end of the DLC. We scrambled this set of assets for about 5 days, which was really fast actually, and I think it's a great call from the art director. That's the kind of thing that an art director is made for, just changing pace of the scene, and it makes sense in the context of the storm. So you have those surface table in front of us. If you walk to one of these tables, you'll see a bunch of assets propped up out of the table.
It's like a holographic table.
Kind of an holographic table. This is the most advanced shader we've done on those current generation hardware. You have all of this in front of you is some meshes, but mostly a shader that gives this 3D volumes. It's something we don't quite see on console, so we kind of went overhead with that. We was a party of shaders. The main thing about that is to try and, if you give attention to what's on the table, it's showing the boat getting ready to dock.
Yeah, because we're in an enclosed room, and we wanted to give the sense that, you know, we are approaching a base. You saw the base out on the deck, but we couldn't really show you any of that because we don't have any technology to show that you're moving forward and all this stuff.
Yeah,
so
the boat doesn't actually advance.
So we kind of put the surface tables on to A, give it a sense that, okay, now I see that we're supposedly docking at a base, and B, also to give us a sense of this is a military boat. And a lot of the designs in this room were kind of trying to show that this is more of a military base boat.
Richard.
Francis Pritchard isn't going to be hearing you anytime soon, Bratan. Not only this close to the base, he's jamming away.
Who the hell are you?
Someone who's gone to a lot of trouble to make your escape look like accident. I was hoping you wouldn't call quite so much attention to it on your way to this room. But one works with the tools he has. Get to the aft cargo bay. Find the sally port there and enter it. You're going to encounter more resistance. But the longer you stay undetected, the better off your future will be.
So this was a very crucial story moment for us, because this was the moment when we reveal that Jensen's getting help from someone. And we wanted to, from a story purpose, you want this to be a very pivotal, important moment. You want the player to focus on it. Yeah. But we were limited in our cutscene budget for this, so we couldn't really do it as a cutscene and ensure that. We had to actually make it more of what we call a forced conversation.
Exactly,
and the conversation itself had to also react to what the player had done earlier, whether he'd played stealthy or not. So we had a lot of challenges in pulling this one off, from both a writing standpoint but also a technical standpoint.
It was a very complex conversation to do technically, because like we did with the first conversation with Netanya, where depending on how you role play in the conversation, we have different gear, and then from then how you play the first section, the trying to exit that environment and getting to the control room to call Pritchard for letting him know that you held hostage somewhere, etc. And then, as you said, it is a reveal that the player also get help from a mysterious contact with that character on the screen, but also he's still isolated from the world because he cannot contact externally to his buddies. But yeah, technically the conversation also tracks the action of the player. Did you get seen by NPCs, by combatants and all? A very good Deus Ex type of mission scripting. So I'm pretty proud of this one. And
it was very reminiscent of the first Deus Ex, because we wanted this mysterious contact, like in the original Deus Ex, to help you get free as well.
Yeah, exactly. And also we had a lot of discussion trying to how do we show that character on the screen, and at some point we wanted to have a character hidden somewhere outside of the world in an empty space and actually have a camera on his face and see an actual character, but we couldn't technically do it properly, so we basically just did this animated texture with a fake robotic voice behind, so that it ended up pretty good, but yeah, it's good.
Running.
Docking bay confirmed.
This is the spot.
What kind of weird stuff is going on here?
Securing bay doors. All personnel prepare for unloading. Aft and bow thrusters full back. Beginning final approach to Rifleman Bank Station.
Sounds like a bomb. Someone shoot it.
Aft and bow thrusters full back. Docking bay confirmed. Securing bay doors. All personnel prepare for unloading.
At this very moment, and it's basically the end of the cargo mission, where you actually finally get out of the boat. Originally on the scripts and the game, we didn't really have any moments, anything specific or special, and so we had a lot of discussion, story level design, and everything, to make it like a bit of an event for the player. So instead of just having this corridor or this like bridge or something, we decided to put a button basically, which is you trigger something and then the whole cargo doors open very slowly and reveal the main base, the secret base, this secret environment that you're gonna have to negotiate for like the next few hours of the game. So it was a very, very important moment, and it actually took a long time to develop, to make it work, make it fit, music-wise, sounds, and the whole environment, the lighting, everything. But I think it turned out very, very well. So noticing the two guards that are just at the bottom of the ramp, one thing like we do very well in Deus Ex is the environment reacts to past actions. In this case, if you had created chaos on the boat, these guards would be alerted and already expecting somebody to come out of this this environment right now. And if you didn't, well, obviously they're just talking and they're just like going on their patrol and everything. And that was a good lead on to the player getting out of an environment into another one, which is beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, we had only 13 weeks to do the DLC, which means that we had plenty of cuts to do from environment-wise. At first, we didn't want to do the exterior of the base that you're standing in right now, but basically the level artist just saw the mandate and just said, you know what, I can do this, and he basically added this upon himself to just do this exterior of the boat, exterior of the base, and that really creates quite a seamless switch from the boat to the base, which is much more interesting than what we had planned, which was crummy at best.
And it works really well too, because we also wanted to get that change of scale from inside the boat. You're inside those real tight corridors and locations, and then you get into this base and wow, suddenly it's big and open, and so the addition of that was a really, really nice plus for us. So one of the other challenges we faced in creating the DLC with our tight time frame is that we really couldn't create a lot of new AI or new enemies, and we really wanted to make a better and a different experience for players. So we had to get really creative, didn't we, as to how we got around that.
That's right. We looked into different archetypes and all sorts of new characters, and it was very difficult for us to just get on with it and match with the story and the environment. So we decided that since it's a military base and it's supposed to be secret, it's off the grid, so it should be more defensive in nature than offensive. So no need for missile launchers and like satellite connection, nukes and stuff. So we wanted to make it more like it's easy for you to if you find it to get in, but then it's kind of hard to get out. So these Typhoon turrets that you see turning are based on a design that you also see at the very beginning of Human Revolution. That's used on dummies in Serif Industries. So we decided that, since it makes sense that the Tyrants were there before and they stole some technologies, they probably took that technology and used it for, their own use, and that's defensive in nature. So you'll see them in different corridors if the alarms are triggered. It's like one of those mechanics that we figured out would make something interesting, and I'll talk.
And there we go.
The security hub you have in front of you is another first for the DLC. It's not something very special, but it's a little trick that we sort of learned to do. If you look at the turrets, if you access the turrets, you can get a vision like a camera from it, but we faked it and by putting a security camera inside the turret model. So if you look at the turret outside, like in the corridor, you won't see it. But that was a way for us to actually tell the player where the turret is actually looking. So we sort of made the POV, the point of view from the turret move at the same time as the camera. And that was the only way we could figure out how to make the security system in this room very challenging for the player and the constraints we had.
I knew someone.
signage. In every game, you always have like those arrows with directions. Say, you have the command room there so that the player can orient himself. In the Deus Ex world and with our art direction, we already have tons of numbers and decals all over the place in the walls. Like you see on the doors, there's 4 there. The problem we had is when we have actually important signage for you guys, just you need to get this way to get to your next objective. Well, it's hard for us to make it meaningful, to make it stand out from the other signage. So we're ending up using those glowy signs, hoping that during playtest they work that way. People tend to look at them a bit more. And it's really, I guess it would never be done that way in a base, really, but there's so much noise with this signage all over the place that it's the only way we have of talking to you.
But it ended up working really well in the playtest. People could find a way before. Yeah. And before we put it in, they just were totally lost in the base.
I'm still lost in the base.
You're always lost.
Yeah.
So the air vents. You're about to go into the cable ducts, which is a new variant of the air vent. You had the same air vents throughout the entire game in the XHR, and we certainly realized that this is kind of annoying. There's this manufacturer which does the air vent for the entire planet.
I don't know, I like hanging out in air vents.
Yeah. So we did this new version, which is kind of the IT guys version of the air vents with cables and computers all the way in there. It was from a gameplay request at first that you have this hackable air vent, and it kind of makes sense. But yeah, from now on we're going to try to have way more variety in narrow passageways for you players.
That's far enough, Jensen.
You're behind this?
I said that's far enough. I can explain everything if you just stay where you are.
I'm not interested in explanations from you.
Then I suggest you get interested, and fast. Getting off the cargo ship was one thing. Getting off the base, when Burke is this close to unleashing his spec ops on you, is quite another.
Well, unless he's able to raise the dead, he's gonna need reinforcements.
Of course, I've only been assuming you want to get out of here alive. Perhaps reuniting with Dr. Reed isn't all that important to you.
What do you know about Megan?
I know the name set off way too many bells and whistles when I added it to Burke's profile search on you. But it helped me to figure out who you are and why you stowed away on the ship. You think Bell Tower kidnapped her, don't you?
You want to tell me you didn't?
I wish I could. But after what I've seen this past year, all I know for certain is she's not on the base. Not anymore.
What's that supposed to mean?
Not what you think. Listen, Rifleman Bank Station supports all Bell Tower operations in this region, Jensen. Regular contract and special op. 6 months ago, I received orders to pull every regular grade soldier and civilian contractor away from the airstrip. 2 Black Hawk helicopters set down minutes later. I thought it had to do with Australia, especially when I saw covered stretchers coming out.
How many?
5. Guarded by a heavily augmented special ops team. Burke went out to meet the leader and the whole group disappeared inside the detention camp. There's some kind of black project going on in there, Jensen. Something involving prisoners and scientists. And I need you to find out what it is.
Why me, Keitner? That is your name, isn't it? The one Burke used back on the ship?
Natanya Keitner, yes. And it has to be you, because any movements I make are noted and logged. I can't risk blowing cover.
Cover? Who are you working for?
A few months ago, an Interpol agent approached me. They've had Bell Tower on their radar for some time, but they've never been able to prove anything. The things that agent pointed out about this base, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. So you see, Jensen, I really am playing the good cop and the bad cop.
I'm gonna need more information than that. Tell me about this black project.
I wish I could, but it's been classified. So classified every BT suit I've talked to refuses to even acknowledge its existence.
But you've seen something. Tell me more about these scientists.
Technically, I'm in charge of operations here, so I keep tabs on people coming in and out. Burke keeps meeting with doctors and researchers, telling me it's part of his interrogation technique.
Got any names?
None that I trust, unless the Doe family suddenly expanded into Australia and Asia. Thing is, I don't always see how they leave.
Yet you're sure that Megan did.
The Blackhawks did. Without the stretchers, but loaded with 5 stasis pods this time.
Fine. What do you need me to do?
Hold still for a second.
What the?
Relax. I'm just compiling your biometric signature. Retinal scan, pulmonary and vascular imaging, the works. Once I upload it to the network and give Corporal Alan Tyler a security rating, you'll be able to pass through specific checkpoints in this sector.
Only this sector, why not others?
Because I've seen how bloodthirsty you like to be. I can get you into the detention camp, but the interrogation wing is going to be a problem. Only Burke can give clearances for that.
And I assume you don't want me to go ask for one.
Still the comedian. There's a security mainframe inside the detention camp's central command. You'll need to upload this copy of your biometrics there by hand. Contact me using your influence once you do. Any more questions?
That's all I need to know.
Just...
So you've just had a very long conversation with Natanya Keitner, a choice conversation. One of the interesting things for us as we approached the writing for the DLC was we realized that A, we were very limited on our cutscene budget. I think we had 3 minutes total for the whole DLC. And we wanted to actually put more of the storytelling into conversations where the player would actually have choices. We call these forced conversations. It made it for a lot more fun for the player, I think, to experience the story through these dialogues. And it also made it a lot more fun and challenging for the writers because we had so many different variables that we had to react to with how you played the cargo, whether you were being sneaky, whether you were killing people. And we had, so these conversations in the DLC ended up being so much more longer than anything we'd written for any of the conversations we'd written in HR, with the exception maybe of the boss fights. But they were a lot more fun. But the interesting thing about this one was the room that we had to put her in.
If you look around, you'll notice something weird. There is no door in that room, and that doesn't make sense. And we actually discussed about that during the project. Is should we put doors? But then if we put a door, that means that there's something on the other side of that door, and the player may want to try and figure out how to get there. So even though Natanya is there, yeah, you have to assume that she came in there crawling, as Jensen does, because there's no door, so it creates this fake environment.
And that's why we couldn't get her out either. We actually wanted her to leave before the player does, but we just kind of couldn't do that. So that's why she's left standing there working on a computer.
And that's why you can't have your gun in this room.
Yes, because we don't want you to shoot your only ally.
What? What do you need, Jensen? Because this is going to take some time.
That's all I need to know.
Great.
So the air vents. You're about to go into the cable ducts, which is a new variant of the air vent. You had the same air vents throughout the entire game in the XHR, and we certainly realized that this is kind of annoying. There's this manufacturer which does the air vent for the entire planet.
I don't know. I like hanging out in air vents.
Yeah. So we did this new version, which is kind of the IT guys version of the air vents with cables and computers all the way in there. It was from a gameplay request at first that you have this hackable air vent, and it kind of makes sense. But yeah, from now on, we're going to try to have way more variety in narrow passageways for you players. here, if you look at the environment, you're seeing it's a good example of our new way of modeling environment after HR. After HR, all the artists were kind of sick of doing it the old ways. It was kind of an annoying way to work. So we have this environment which has a lot more polygons in it instead of textures. And if you look at the floor, you see that everything is kind of modeled a bit. Instead of mapping individual mechanical lines, we're giving a lot more volumes to the environment. We can actually push off a lot of polygons in this engine, and we didn't use that enough in the original game. We really used polygons to the max in that game. It enabled us to work much faster and create more interesting environment. The volume is there. It's just more interesting. And mainly if you think it's ugly, I don't really care. No, I do care, but. It's an interesting way of working.
It's not ugly.
And it's not really ugly.
I think it's beautiful.
Thanks. I have my own complex, and yeah.
So earlier I talked about how complex the dialogues were to write for The Missing Link because they had to react to a lot of variables. The conversation with Quinn is by far the most complex of all the conversations we had to write because there were many, many things going on. Because we gave the player access to the base, because we allowed you to play the objectives in the order you want, first we had to realize that if you did not talk to Netanya, he couldn't be here. So we had to put up like a gone fishing sign, which was also a hint that he was actually on the boat waiting with you earlier. But then we also had to, basically for his dialogue, include all of these possible reactions to how you treated people in the base, whether you killed a lot of people in the base or not. We had to actually add to it a side quest because this Quinn gives you this optional side quest. So we had to have all these strings of dialogues that react to whether you found the pieces, whether you accept the dialogue. We also had to make allowances for if the player gets the social aug, then you can use the social aug against Quinn to, I forget exactly what the point was for that, but like maybe you would get cheaper prices or something like that. And we also had for Quinn the fact that if you did the optional secondary objective inside the cargo boat, he would have to react to that. And we also, because again, we had all the ways that you could complete this, you could actually see Netanya, go into the base, do a lot of the missions for her without ever seeing Quinn. And so we had to kind of take into account for that, and we had to take into account whether you get an objective later on with this eye and come back. So this was one of those conversations that really had to be fully graphed out long before we even started writing it. And then add to that the character of Quinn himself and the flavor. So this one was a lot of fun and a lot of challenge to write and to act it out as well.
Do you need some water at this point?